Greetings, everyone, and thank you so much for everyone coming out today. My name is Kyrie Williams, and I'm the manager of Entrepreneur and Inclusion Programs for Rev 1. So I would love to just introduce myself and introduce what Rev 1 has right now. This is our first Fireside chat on diversity, equity, inclusion. I'd like to get a round of applause for that. Thank you so much. So here at Rev 1, we are here about creating generational wealth. We're here about investing in the Black and Brown community and also female diverse communities. So within this Grow to Skill Mentor program that I have, we have mentors and competent mentors that are able to connect each other and be able to give competent resources, funding, also advice, and customer learning labs. Also within the program, I manage a DEI grant fund where we're able to give money to support Black and Brown and female entrepreneurs in the Columbus area. And also I'm here to build up the pipeline and ensure that we're creating generational wealth. My goal here today is to ensure that we're investing in the Black and Brown community. We're teaching each other about the partnership and the experience about ownership. Right now, our company and right now our resources are not very much so in tune with creating generational wealth. So what I want to do here today is just ensure that we're closing the gap on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're bringing up our entrepreneurs, we're bringing up our children to ensure that we're able to build our own table, we're able to resource and plant seeds into our own communities, and we're also investing in the importance of entrepreneurship and owning. So, it's just such a phenomenal event that we're doing here, and, I'm really trying to close up this gap and build up the pipeline in the community to ensure that this is what we are, this is what we're doing, and ensure that this is the new Rev 1. So, thank you so much for everybody that's come here today. A little bit about myself is I'm an Army veteran, served 7 years in the military. My background is in people resources. Before I came to Rev 1, I worked for the government. I've held numerous different DoD positions within the Department of Defense with various levels of classification. So within my experience working for the government, I was able to learn what diversity is. Not about the importance of diversity, but about what diversity is as a whole. Going out, meeting people, going to different countries, experiencing what diversity is. So in this new position that I'm in, I want to ensure that I'm able to support the community, let people know what this new generation is about and the importance of generational wealth and generational gap in entrepreneurship. So I just want to say thank you so much for everyone here for coming out today. I would also like to introduce our moderator, Craig Chavez, holistic business coach, founder of the Solo Creators Club, and also one of my mentors in the program. So thank you so much for everyone for coming out today. It's phenomenal to
Thanks so much for everybody coming out. I know we've already clapped. Let's give Kyrie another big hand. She's absolutely incredible. She's been able to have so much impact in such a short amount of time. So to kick things off, I want to poll the audience real quick. How many people here are familiar with Simon Sinek? And what is he known for? Why? Because his whole idea is that your why is what drives you, your purpose is what drives you. But what comes before your why is your who, because who you are affects why you do what you do. So the first question I have for the panel is, who are you and what has been your journey to this day? Starting off with you, Lindsay.
That question wasn't on.
I remixed it.
I would say, it's funny, we were all introducing ourselves to each other beforehand, and I would say, one, being brand new, I'm thrilled here, that's really first to me. And I grew up in Ohio. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, and was the first person in my family to go to college. Grew up in a tiny little shotgun house in a neighborhood that then became full of mansions. So we're surrounded by mansions, and we grew up in a little four-room house that my great-grandparents bought when they immigrated from Ireland and raised 10 kids there. And then my grandparents raised a bunch of kids there, and my parents raised a bunch of kids there. And never really, my family was very content and happy with our lives. But it was, I always had a lot of curiosity around things beyond that. And so at a young age, at 11 years old, went studying abroad in Costa Rica, was going to Costa Rica, then started studying abroad with families in Africa, and in the fall, Nepal and Tibet. And so much of who I am has been kind of crafted out of questions around who other people are. And I would say that's really kind of been the foundation of who I am, and just led to more curiosity around who other people are and how I can take learnings from other people and turn them into things and try to just create positivity out there in the world. So yeah, that's
And how did that lead you to becoming the entrepreneur you are today?
In addition to just being curious about people, I'm a problem solver, and so I can't see a problem and not try to come up with a solution. And so I'm founder and CEO of a company called StrongSuit. And at StrongSuit, we leverage AI and real human beings to alleviate the mental load for busy working families. So think about all the stuff that you have to do and manage. Talking to somebody, Sarah from Red team out there, and so I heard how when I had my first child, I joke with my husband that I asked him one day to pick up diapers on his way home. He was like, "Oh no, we're done. No, we have 13." Like in the back of my head, I could tell you plus or minus 5 how many diapers we had at our house, and we need to pick them up today because this is how quickly we're going to go through them. And I've got an event tomorrow after work, and you are working late tomorrow night, so nobody's going to be able to pick them up tomorrow night, so we need to pick them up today. And like all of the mental capacity in my head that was being taken up with all that kind of stuff. So I suddenly realized that I wanted to try to solve this problem and make life easier for working families, which is why I created StrongSuit.
That's amazing. So, to you, Brandon, who is Brandon?
Who am I? Thank you guys for coming. It feels so good to be back in Columbus. My roommate from college is back there, and when we first transferred from Bowling Green to Ohio State, we were at, I don't know if I'm going the right directions, we were at Kinnear Economics. So it was a lot of very, full circle moments today coming to Red One office. Who am I? So originally from Cleveland, grew up single, mother, household, was someone who's always into fashion and creation, went to Catholic high school, and then afterwards, transferred to my neighborhood school where I met my college roommates, and we went to a Bowling Green. I was like pre-med, and then he actually told me, "Hey man, you should look at this like business stuff." And we took an economics class together, and then we transferred to Ohio State, Kinnear Economics, and he told me, "Hey, you should think about like investment banking." And I basically looked at this movie called Wall Street. I watched it for 100 days in a row. I'm not kidding, because he told me in the summer, so this is like July, and then by the time we were going to school in September, because we were still in quarters at that time, I was like locked in. I knew I was going to Wall Street, and then I was like, "Oh, you have to apply to the business school. You can't just be in the business school." But lo and behold, like I used my brain, and I was at certain organizations in before I got into Fisher, where I had an opportunity to go to a diversity symposium at JP Morgan in New York. And my sophomore year, I had came there in September, but by February I had an offer to work at JP Morgan in New York. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. You could just put your mind to stuff, and it happens. And so eventually I ended up interning at multiple banks while I was an undergrad, moved to New York full time, and lived in Harlem, and had met new roommates, and was working as an investment banker. And while we were working in Wall Street and living in Harlem, I think when you're black and you live in Harlem, it's different, right? Because if you're if you're an African American, you don't really have history, right? Because you came up here as slaves. So I was like, wow, this is black excellence. This is where my roots, if I don't have roots, I can stick to these. And so we invested in small business and real estate with our personal capital, which we didn't have much of because we live in New York. So we did dental practices, we did coffee shops, and we eventually stumbled upon early stage startups, and we said, hey, we want to invest in people who live in the Harlems of the world. And eventually ended up raising our own fund. We raised 2 now. Fund 1 was $40 million, and we did 28 investments, and now we're on Fund 2, which is $134 million. And we'll do 45 investments, have done 21 so far. And it's super awesome to kind of come back and share the story. Be back. I was texting my roommates from college, like ground zero, and be here. And yeah, that's who I am and how I got here. I now split time between Cleveland and New York, but my heart and soul and everything really started here in Columbus.
So Brandon, building on top of that, what made you want to come back to Ohio, at least part-time? What do you see in Ohio, in the Midwest, that has you so excited to have your temporary headquarters?
I just see a lot of diamonds in the rough. I see a lot of opportunity. I mean, the two reasons why I came back was, well, number one, we raised over $100 million, and then me and one person, because it was during COVID. And then secondarily, like one of my other best friends from high school ran for mayor of Cleveland and won. And so I said to myself, well, I'm like late 20s, early 30s. It's a once in a century pandemic will help me make a once in a century decision to go back while in my prime. And I think what I'm learning is that if you can go somewhere and learn, and you can come back home where they may not have those learnings or those products or those tools, etc., you can really make a difference civically, but you can also make a difference generational wealth wise as well. And so like I'm on the tourism world, bureau of Cleveland at mid-30s, one black person boy. New York doesn't want me under tourism bureau, or like I'm on different boards, or I'm on different meetings. I was like meeting with the publicly traded company CEO in Cleveland. He's like, well, how can I help? How can I do this? You're the only brand. There's no other brands in Cleveland asking you the things you're asking for. You should be invited. Oh, you should be here. You should meet this person. You should meet that person. So I do think understanding, like when you build skill sets, I was talking to some young guys back there. When you build skill sets, that's really all that matters. And when you build skill sets, you go to industries that are really profitable and you execute at a high level. It doesn't really matter where you are, especially if you're in like tier 2, tier 3 city. You can really do big fish in a small pond and still get to some of the big cities that you well known have a reputation for set.
That's amazing. So we've talked a lot about what ethnic diversity means, but diversity comes in different shapes. Also with gender diversity. And Lindsay, with you being a woman in the tech startup space, I know it's not been the easiest journey. So tell us a little more about your journey as a woman in the tech startup space, and what's been some of your challenges and how you overcome those challenges as a woman.
Yeah, sometimes it's like hard to disentangle because I will tell folks like, so I'm a female founder. I live in the Midwest, which like pitching West Coast investors. They're like, you're a female founder building a highly technical product. You don't have an engineering degree and you live in Ohio? Like they just kind of look at you like, I've never seen anything like this before. So there's a hard to disentangle kind of like what's the driver of some of the stuff you see. But I think unequivocally, like female founders are held to a different standard. Period. There's a professor at Harvard Business School who did a huge longitudinal study of female founders and male founders raising venture capital. And what she found is that when female founders are pitching founders, 70% of the questions that they get are about mitigating risk. When a male founder pitches investors for venture capital, 70% of the questions that he gets are about the size of the opportunity. And so if you think about that, and this was exactly what I was experiencing. So I'm going into these conversations, and I'm spending 70% of my time talking about how I'm going to mitigate the trillions of risks in my business. And then if I'm lucky, I get a little bit of time to talk about and it's a huge market opportunity, and I can make everybody a lot of money, and this is going to be great, we're going to build intergenerational wealth. But that opportunity for me, that conversation was so short compared to my male peers. And I was very fortunate that I took strong suit through Techstars, which was a great network for us. And coming out of that program, as I was raising our pre-seed round of funding, I would meet weekly with, it was 3 other founders on the target cohort, all men. And we would meet and we would practice our pitches on each other, we'd ask each other questions. And so I would ask them the questions when they pitched, I would ask them questions if I was getting in meetings. And so I'd be like, okay, what's your churn? Okay, what's that look like when you look at it from a cohort analysis? Okay, how far are you for break even? And they'd be like, dang, stop! Like, questions. Like, what are you talking about? Like, these are questions that we get. And I'm like, I've never gotten any questions like this. And one of them was like laughing. He was like, we're releasing a pre-seed round of funding. Like, I don't know what break even is, but we're just talking about break even clients at a pre-seed round. And I was like, oh, so you haven't had to go into your financial model and unpack every assumption in there to prove that your break, like I've got to break even at this point, and I have to prove that my assumptions actually get me there because they don't believe me. And so just as we were having these conversations, it became so obvious. It's like, wow, we have really different conversations. I'm like, what questions are you guys getting? And they're like, so like, how are you going to acquire customers? Like, it was just a totally, completely different set of questions. And the professor at our business school, what our research proved out was that this phenomenon is very real, and that the impact is that male founders raise 7 times as much capital, even if you go to say, like, okay, now let's take the female founders who do raise capital, which is less than 2% of all venture startups that have a female founder able to raise capital. And even if you just look at those and compare them to your male peers are raising 7 times as much money. And so the thing that I also saw is that also influences then how I'm running my business. Because if I think I have to get all over my numbers. So like one of the other things that I asked the male founders that are friends who I would have these like weekly working sessions with, I'd be like, okay, so when you guys do a pitch, they're going to ask you to go do a bunch more analyses. How much time do you make in? Like, can you figure out? Like, sometimes I can go back and like it'll take me 2 hours to do all the other analysis that they want to see. Sometimes 4 hours, depending on how much they ask for. Like, how much time are you baking in after each pitch to go back and run more numbers analysis for them? Who's asking for analysis? And so, like, if you just think about all that time that I was spending doing additional analysis to make all of my numbers, to answer these questions about risk mitigation, my male peers were using that time to sell and to talk to their customers and improve on their product. And like, who's going to get through? Like, I know my numbers inside out, and I can run my business well because of that. But at the same time, they just have more time because we're just being treated differently. So I think it has not only impact on who's getting that funding, but then also on how those different types of individual businesses.
Wow, that's incredible. But that's some of the extra scrutiny help make you a better entrepreneur. And so,
My financial losses.
I'm probably serious. And so, to Brandon, same question to you, being a young Black venture capitalist. What are some of the challenges that you've encountered in your position?
By the way, what Lindsay was talking about, that's just nuts, right? And that's not saying that's what Harlem Capital is, but it's literally why Harlem Capital is, so you can actually let go of any speaking of Black person or speaking to the first person or woman, etc. Like people invest in what they know. That's why people always move back home. They trust what they know. That's one, right? They trust what they know. So I think when you build out stats, like I think the gender of an actual investor really correlates almost 1-to-1 to the gender of founders. So, for example, which is true, like 85+% of all VCs are white, you might say 85+% of all founders are white. It's true. And then if 2% of all VCs or 1% of all VCs are Black, you can't be surprised that 1% of all founders are Black. Or if you just think about from a female perspective, right? Or woman's perspective, 13-14% of all VCs are women, 13-14% of all founders are women. So I think what our idea was that Harlem Capital, or just in general, we need more diverse check writers to do what people have to do forever, investing in things that they know and championing their community, investing in their buddies that they went to college with. All these different things It's just like a really weird thing to think about. Like, oh, we just need more people who are diverse with money in their pockets to write checks. And it's very easier said than done. So, Greg, now to your question, how are we? So, before Hollow Capital raised our first fund, target was 25 million. We were very blessed and fortunate to raise 40, so those who tried. No diverse manager had ever raised money to focus on diversity, period, in the history of in venture capital. And it's funny, two of my business partners worked at a company called ICV Partners, Inner City Ventures. It's a private equity shop. They tried it 20 years ago, and they couldn't find enough people who would actually give up equity to their business that were diverse. So someone had already tried it before, and that was private equity. So it's like we needed really big companies that buy it. So we said you got to go early. And so what we basically did was we put up our own cash. So we invested, like I mentioned, like small business, we invested in real estate. Once we found early stage tech startups as like our pledge, I mean, we put up like 50 to 250 plus of our own capital into investments. And then we started fundraising. And it took us 18 months to fundraise for our first fund. The first 12 months, we raised like $12 million. And then we had a big anchor coming, TPG anchored our fund. And then once they came in, once the ally came in, I'm not sure if you guys know, but like, once the white guy came in, hey, I'm on these boards, $5 million check. And then we had like some of the folks who started private equity, they invested a check, and then Savings Foundation came in. So honestly, the first 12 months were around $12 million. We went after that, the last 6 months, we raised, close to 30 million, and that was between 6 or 7 folks who said yes and took their first chance. And writing a $5 million check for a fund like ours, when you're a pension fund that writes $100+ million checks, as soon as they wrote that check, they forget about us, right? If you will. So not only do you have to convince someone that you are someone to take a chance on, you have to continually grow your firm so that you can become a core position. Each one of these endowments or pension funds, et cetera, only have 10 or 15 managers. And you can guess who they are, right? Andreessen Horowitz, Insight, Sequoia, et cetera. So for the young, diverse fund, who's raising $40 million, it was definitely a challenge, but I would say the people who took the chance on us the most, like John Mapleweed, who's the CEO of TPG, was people who took risk at our age. Like Henry Kravis from KKR. He started his first fund at 29, 28. And when we pitched him for him to give us a large check, we were all 27, 28. So the people who saw us or themselves in us were people who really opened the door up for us. And then that was like the platform that we ended up building.
Very fascinating. And that perfectly segues into the next question. Go back to you, Lindsay. What's been like your pivotal aha moment, or one of your biggest lessons or nuggets learned along the way in your journey?
This kind of relates a little bit to answering the last one. I would say my biggest aha moment was, I think this is just all this has some similarities in our background. And so I think that as somebody who is used to working really hard and kind of gets excited to prove themselves to people, I can fall into that trap of trying to prove myself to people. And so I think the biggest aha for me, particularly when it came to founding StrongSuit and having success in finding acquiring customers, acquiring investors, acquiring team members, and building my team, I had to quickly learn that I can't waste my time trying to convince the non-believers. You have to quickly disqualify and move on. And that was like a huge breakthrough for me. I never worked in sales before. I was fortunate, one of our investors at StrongSuit had a sales coach who I spent a little bit of time with. He was like, it's super important that you quickly disqualify. Do not waste your time having a conversation with somebody who is just gonna keep asking you questions and is never gonna buy your product. Move on. And that was shocking to me, because I was kind of like these people. And then I realized that I applied the same thing to investors too, and frankly to like anyone that I was thinking about having any kind of business partnership with. I was thinking about hiring them or whatever it was. I think that was the biggest thing for me. And to really just earlier question, I was spending a lot of time crunching the numbers and coming up with these incredibly beautiful and thoughtful models that I was like, oh God, this is financial model. They're going on. And if they don't actually believe in what you're building and in who you are as a leader and what you're trying to do and the impact that you're trying to drive, a financial model is not going to get them there. So for me, I had to realize, like, don't waste my time there. Step away from the numbers. I might be data driven, but actually, like, a lot of business decisions are not made on data too. They're made on relationships, they're made on networks, and so I think that was the biggest aha moment for me, to say there's some things that you can't just grind your way through. That you actually have to be a little bit more thoughtful about them and save your time for your day.
That's amazing. And Brandon, for you, I know you have a lot of aha moments.
Your boy's been through it.
Yeah.
So, piggybacking real quick on what Lindsay said, like, the biggest success for us from Harlem Capital, how we raised that first fund, is that your job as a CEO, entrepreneur, fund manager, et cetera, you just find people who believe what you already do. And then you help them understand that you are the best person to execute on these shared goals. That's it. That's literally what you shall do as a CEO, fund manager, et cetera. When you spend time, trying to beat down brick walls with your bare hands, that's where the confidence gets shot. That's when a lot of things go left. And you're just mad at the world, right? And you feel very down. Things can go the wrong way. So I just want to say, find people who actually believe in already, and then show them through numbers and traction, etc., that you are actually the right person to like solve this, like, share belief. But going to aha moments in general, I think I'll probably just honestly just say to simple things like Jim Rohn, one of my favorite folks, his quotes like, "Work harder on yourself than you do in your job." And when I was an investment banker, like, I worked so hard my first year, and I got an okay bonus. And then I didn't do anything in my second year, and I got paid more. And I was like, what is going on here? And I was like, this ain't the job for me. And I was like, I gotta find something where I'm just getting the best out of myself. And I gotta build self-integrity. I gotta keep promises to myself that I can have confidence and actually at a high level on anything. I don't want to be afraid of anything. So I think having that is one thing. I was just with a mentor in Philadelphia on Friday, and he said, brand is everything. And I think one of the big reasons why our capital raised is because when we were writing these small 15 to 25K checks, we had social media following, we had a nice website, we were doing events, all these things, and people thought we had real money. And it was all because we had Twitter, it's all because we had Instagram, we had LinkedIn. And I think it was because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, right? So the way we treated $15,000 checks that we literally were scrubbing up, or 25K checks that we were splitting, was the way we said we were going to treat $2.5 million checks. We had the same diligence tests for 30 to 40 pages. Back then with the 15K check, we still have those today. So I think like brand, reputation, and actually treating things, or the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. I'm trying to get through, I had a last one, I might be forgetting it. I think it's good for now.
Yeah, I think we dropped a lot of gems there. That was excellent. And so we've talked a lot about the past, about who you are, your journey. But let's switch and think about the future for a minute. So Lindsay, like, what are you looking forward to in the future? What are you working on? What are you optimistic about for you and Trump's career?
Yeah. Well, one, I'm excited to now have Brandon to call when I find myself falling in that trap of like not investing in myself. That I need the accountability buddy on that. So now I've got something to be said about that. So we've got a lot going on at Strong Suits. We raised it around close to the end of last year, but when was one of our investors and we continue to work with them. We brought on a bunch of new talent on our team, which is really exciting. We've been building out our AI capabilities, and we actually were very fortunate to be in a position where we couldn't keep up with the demand for our products, so we had to stop taking on new customers and really focus on building our products so we could capture that demand. So we're getting ready to launch into growth mode again, which is very exciting. So I get excited about that. And we're at a point now in the business where, for so long, and I'm sure both of you guys can benefit this as well, as visual audience, for so long I felt like I was the one that was constantly writing it out. And now I have this incredible team of really talented people around me who, to your point, Brandon, believe what I believe and are trying, we share a vision of the future that we're all working towards. And I finally get to just think more about that vision and make sure we're pointed in the right direction and think more about how I can support them in becoming the best leaders that they are so that we can all collectively work toward and achieve that vision rather than just constantly being focused on the day-to-day grind of getting there and hitting the next milestone. So it's a neat inflection point where you finally get to, it's almost like all the hard work, now I feel like I have built that band of believers around me. And so now it just becomes the really fun part of not only executing, but being like, we're executing and we're shooting for that like star in the sky, and we're gonna have fun trying to get there.
That's lovely. It's awesome to see your hard work paying off. And Brandon, same to you. So what are you optimistic about? What's coming on the horizon for you in Harlem Capital?
Yeah, this is, I mean, we have a very long mission. We want to invest in 1,000 diverse entrepreneurs over the next 20 years, and we want to change the face of entrepreneurship. So you can understand how hard that's going to be to do. We're super excited. I mean, like I mentioned, we're on our second fund right now, about to raise our third end of this year, and exciting. We'll probably double our team, so we'll go from 6 to 7 to 12 and 14. So that's going to be really exciting. In terms of areas that we're looking at a lot of vertical software, so that's the whole stuff. We're looking at software for laundromat, software for assisted living, software, just a lot of meat and potatoes, like Midwest software for businesses, so we're excited about that. You mentioned AI. I think we're wary about what can happen with AI, but we do understand how interesting of a tool it could be to push us into the future. The other two things I would say that we're excited about, we have an internship program, so if anyone ever was thinking about getting into a venture, we have a part-time internship program where if you're undergrad, you're MBA, or if you're full-time, you can work remotely with us for 10 weeks. And we've had 17 classes so far. We've had over 10,000 people apply. Now, 1,000 people apply for each quarter, and out of 1,000 each quarter, we take 6. And over those 17 classes, we now have over 100 people who came through. And of those 100, over 40 are now full-time in private equity or venture capital. So we're excited to continue that, and we're taking that same knowledge, the same frameworks, and we want to do this with operators. So people who are now working at Google or Facebook, Amazon, Stripe, Shopify, who've worked for like 3, 4, 5 years. We want to create these like small communities, people between 4 to 6, and help them launch their first company. Because you already have worked with, if you're in product, you work with someone in sales, you work with someone in engineering, etc., and you were an A player. And A players kind of like attractive. But A players actually only play with other A players, so they're already attractive, but they only play with A players. And so that's something that we're working on. So how do we get really great operators who are tech startups, like WordPress, to not feel afraid to leave this $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 job and create generational wealth in the next decade to find a company, and we want to help them like with any challenges that they might have around finding a co-founder, an idea, how do they talk to investors. So we actually just launched that today. It's called our Founder Launchpad, so check that out on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Awesome. So last question from me before we open up questions to the audience. It's a simple one. What are a couple pieces of advice that you'd love to give either to yourself in the past or to the audience in the present? Brandon?
Yeah. Well, I gave a lot of them earlier. I didn't know that this question was coming, I guess. One that I realized recently was that you can't be afraid to make mistakes. I actually think that, especially as we talk about diversity, people of color and women are extremely afraid to make mistakes. When we get something, we get some money, we want to hold on to it, we don't want to put it back out there and reinvest it, etc. So I think we really need to be unapologetic about making mistakes or taking risks, calculated risks to make mistakes, because I think that's the only way that we're going to learn. That's the only way that we're going to level up. The second piece I was going back, we're talking about foundation. If you're going to be founding a company, the only way you can be successful in founding a company and getting the right people to come work with you is if you are a halfway decent human being. And so I was just actually making a YouTube video about this, where it's like you got to focus on your health, and that's like physical, mental, and emotional. So you got to be journaling, you got to be meditating, you got to be in the gym, and you got to actually keep promises that you make to yourself. And then the second piece is stop focusing on desires and wants that you can't control, because that's going to hit your internal mental chasm, or it's going to hit the noggin really hard. It is going to confuse you, your self-worth, and how hard you can execute on something. And I think once you do those small things of just actually keeping the promises to yourself on the everyday stuff that really works on that internal, now you are like the best person to go execute on this like tactical business problem. And people wonder why you vibrate at such a high vibration. And I think, I've been working on this myself, when you're on that vibration and you meet someone else, like it just makes a lot of sense. And if you can get all those people together on the same team, you really become unstoppable. And you stop going after goals. Like we have a mantra of thousands of diverse entrepreneurs over the next 20 years, but like we just have a standard. Our standard is get 1% better every day. We'll hit 1,000, we'll hit 2,000. As long as we're getting 1% better every day, but the only way we can do that is if we are taking care of ourselves. So I would say cool on the financial models and all these other things. You really need to be good yourself. And we also need to check in on each other, because I think it's lonely out here. The number one, we talked to like 50 operators before we launched that founder launch pad. The number one reason why so many guys have $300,000 job and they're like, $1 million raised is because they think they're going to be lonely. They think there's going to be isolation. So it is a very real thing when you're starting a company. And if you're going to go after that, you need a community, but you also need a firm foundation of how you actually can take care of yourself and be one, and then eventually go out to work next to you.
I love that, Brandon, because one piece of advice I give my clients is that in order to begin, you must know within. It starts with self. In business, I'm a holistic business coach, so I do the inner and the outer work to help people start and grow their businesses. So I buy them. And so you can see what are some of your partners and methods.
I would say that mine, or in a similar vein actually, I would say that where I've gone off course at different times as a founder or throughout my life was when I was trying to like ignore my own instincts and be who I thought other people were loving or asking me to be. Or I was in an environment that was unfamiliar to me, and I was trying to read through and mold myself to what I thought I needed to be or look like. And so for me, those two things that keep coming out of that, like one, Brandon just keeps setting me up. I tend to be pretty bold and very risks don't scare me so much. And I think sometimes I would find myself trying to like tap that down a little bit, and that never led to good things. So for me, it's constantly just going back to like, I am bold, I feel good about this. It doesn't matter if other people around me are scared. I got this. So that's one. And I would say that the other one is I also am somebody who I hold myself to a really high standard, and so I hold people that I work with and people around me to a really high standard. And there's been times too where I felt like I needed to, maybe my standards are too high, maybe I need to bring this down a little bit, maybe I'm demanding or asking too much. And that was another time where time and time again, nope, standards up here, let's do it. So it's those are the two that I constantly am like reminding myself, like, no, this is who you are, and you're gonna own this, and you're not going to water it down to make other people comfortable.
I got one more here. This was something I did say to a lot of people. I assume if you came to this, you're trying to get different results you've never gotten before in your business or life, etc. So I think, if you have a chance to go home and have a conversation with something in your journal or something, and figure out like what are things that you can do that you've like never done to get some results that you never got before, and like how you challenge yourself, who you keep as an accountability partner or teammate with you, and just do 30 things. Like literally do something that you've never done that you know is going to be good for you, and see how it changes. And then after you do that for 30 days, do something else the next 30 days. So I think again, we just literally have to keep promises to ourselves, and then we can just honestly be content to do anything. Climb mountains, we can create companies, we can do all these things. We can help change the world if we actually work, hold ourselves.
I'll add to that too, so I actually think that this is sometimes not in our DNA as Midwesterners.
No, it's not.
Yes.
And so I think that it's like something that we have to constantly go back to, because I even think about, I would say my number one supporter in my entire life and biggest cheerleader is my dad. And there are still times where he'll be like, girl, who do you think you are? And it's like, it's not because he's trying to like hold you back in any way, exactly the opposite. He's always trying to promote me so that I can do anything. But I think as Midwesterners, often we have just a humility about us, and sometimes we're kind of our own, can be our own worst enemies in that way. And so I would say we should all hold each other to shine great and not let our own Midwestern humility get mud.
It's beautiful. So on each side of the room, we have Kyrie, we have Giselle, and we're going to open up the floor for questions. So, gentleman right there, Giselle, see right.
Cool. Hello, Brandon and Lizzie. Hello? Anyone hear me?
I'm sure you're loud enough.
Yeah.
Hello, Lizzie and Brandon. Thanks for coming out today. So, Brandon, I had a question for you specifically. The first 12 months of raising your first fund, you mentioned was very grindy. I was curious to know what challenges did you and your team face, and then what did you guys do to kind of help you guys kind of push through it?
So, we faced it. Yes. What was your name?
Brandon.
Oh, of course you will be the first person. Brandon, my brother from another mother, asked, we took 12 months of fundraising, and then those last 6 months of the 18 were really great for us to kind of explode and get to our goal. What were some of the challenges that we went through? I guess in those first 12 months. Because the last 6 months, man, that was like a roller coaster ride, going down and having fun and stuff like that. The first 12 months were just literally eating gravel every day. And I think what we had to do was we set ourselves standards. And we said, hey, what we found out is that all of our managing directors and all of our mentors who look like us have never taken risk to start their own thing. So them telling us no is actually okay. And let's be honest, they don't make enough money to really help us raise enough. We just wanted $25,000 or $50,000, $100,000, etc. And it's going to be really hard to get all those people to get to 20, 25 million. So why don't we ask them to introduce us to some of their bosses or some of the wealthier people in their ecosystems. And we found out with what I said earlier, you only want to talk to people who believe in what you do. So we did that. We stopped trying to convince people. And then what we also realized is that it's at least probably 4 to 5, I assume it might be similar to you, 4 to 5 degrees of separation before you find your champions. And so our goal was, hey, if we can get to $3 to $5 million ourselves, and then we can finally find that anchor investor, will be great. And we actually went back, we were part of two diversity programs. One was MLT, Management Leadership for Tomorrow, for Black and Latino students who want to get in business in undergrad. And then we did SEO, Sponsors of Educational Opportunities, which is like, if you want to get an investment banking in your Black and Latino. So we were in both of those programs, and then we talked to the people who chaired both of those programs. One was Henry Ravis,